Why do some people fade at 75 while others thrive at 90? That question has haunted me for years. Watching people age. Watching some seem to crumble almost overnight while others somehow stay vibrant, engaged, alive in ways that defy every expectation. The difference isn't always health or money or luck. It's something else. Something quieter. Something that becomes visible only when comparing the two paths side by side. My name is Annie, and I've spent a lot of time watching people age. Not in a clinical way, just in the way that comes from living long enough to see patterns, from watching parents and grandparents and neighbors and friends, from seeing how some people cross that 75 threshold and seem to fall apart while others cross it and keep going strong for another 10, 15, 20 years. And the question that keeps coming back is, what's the difference? What are the ones who thrive doing that the ones who decline aren't? Because the decline, when it comes, can be shockingly fast. Someone who seemed fine at 74 is suddenly fragile at 76. Suddenly in a wheelchair, suddenly confused, suddenly living in a facility instead of their home. And people say things like aging caught up with them, or it happens so fast after 75 as if it's inevitable, as if there's nothing to be done, as if crossing that age is like crossing a cliff edge where everyone falls. But that's not true. That's not what the evidence shows. Not the clinical evidence, maybe, but the lived evidence. The evidence of watching real people age in real ways. Some fall off that cliff, but others don't. Others stay sturdy, stay engaged, stay themselves. And the question is why. There was a neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She lived 3 doors down for as long as anyone could remember. And when she hit 75, everyone watched her carefully, waiting for the decline, waiting for the inevitable slowing down. Because that's what happened to most people. That's what had happened to her husband a few years before. He'd hit 75 and within 2 years was gone, just faded away, stopped going out, stopped doing things, stopped engaging. And then he was just gone. But Mrs. Chen didn't follow that pattern. She turned 75 and kept going to her garden club, kept walking every morning, kept hosting book club in her living room once a month, turned 78 and was still doing all of it. Turned 80 and added a painting class. Turned 82 and seemed to have more energy than people 20 years younger. And everyone wondered, how? What was her secret? What was she doing that others weren't? The answer, when watching her closely, wasn't one thing. It was many small things. Things that seemed insignificant on their own, but together created a pattern. A pattern of staying connected, staying purposeful, staying in motion, staying engaged with life instead of withdrawing from it. Every morning she walked, not far, not fast, just around the block, sometimes twice around if she was feeling good. And she did it regardless of weather. Rain meant an umbrella, cold meant a heavier coat, but the walk happened, every single morning, without exception. And that walk did more than keep her body moving. It kept her visible, kept her part of the neighborhood, kept her seeing people and being seen by people, kept her in the world instead of retreating from it. The garden club met once a week, and she never missed it, even when she didn't feel like going, even when it would have been easier to stay home, even when the weather was bad or she was tired or a dozen other reasons presented themselves. She went because going meant connection, meant conversation, meant friendship, meant purpose, meant having something on the calendar to look forward to, meant being part of something larger than herself, and the book club. Once a month, her living room filled with women ranging in age from 60 to 90. They'd discuss whatever book they'd read, drink tea, eat cookies, laugh, debate, connect. And Mrs. Chen hosted it, which meant she had to prepare, had to read the book, had to clean the house, had to bake something, had to be ready. All of that was purpose. All of that was engagement. All of that was a reason to keep going, to stay sharp, to stay present, to stay alive. As the years passed, watching her, the pattern became clear. The things that kept her thriving weren't complicated, weren't expensive, weren't dependent on perfect health or ideal circumstances. They were simple daily choices, choices to stay connected, to keep moving, to maintain purpose, to remain engaged, to adapt when necessary but never to surrender. When her knees started hurting, she didn't stop walking. She got better shoes, started using a walking stick, adjusted her route to avoid hills. But the walking continued. When her eyes started struggling with small print, she didn't stop reading. She got better lighting, larger print books, eventually an e-reader where she could adjust the text size, but the reading continued. When it became harder to host book club, the group helped more. Someone else brought the cookies. Someone else helped with setup and cleanup. But the gathering continued. Every challenge was met with adaptation instead of surrender. And that seemed to be the key difference. The key thing that separated the people who thrived from the people who declined. When faced with difficulty, with limitation, with the inevitable losses that come with aging, some people adapted and continued while others stopped and withdrew. And the ones who stopped and withdrew declined rapidly, while the ones who adapted and continued kept going. There's something else I still think about often. A man named Tom who lived down the street. He retired at 67 from a career that had consumed most of his life. And everyone congratulated him, celebrated his retirement, talked about how he'd earned his rest, how he could finally relax, how he didn't have to do anything anymore. And he took that message to heart. He stopped setting an alarm, stopped having a schedule, stopped having plans, just relaxed, just rested, just did nothing. And at first it seemed like heaven, like the reward for all those years of work. But slowly, gradually, something started to happen. He started to fade, started to seem smaller, started to lose that spark that had always defined him. By 70, he seemed 75. By 72, he seemed 80. By 75, he was in a nursing home, confused and declining, and everyone said aging had caught up with him fast. But it wasn't aging that caught up with him. It was purposelessness. It was the complete loss of structure and meaning and reason to get up in the morning. It was the message he'd internalized that retirement meant doing nothing, that he'd earned the right to disengage, to withdraw, to stop. And stopping, it turned out, was fatal, not immediately, but gradually. Certainly. The contrast with Mrs. Chen was stark. She'd never had a career to retire from, had been a homemaker, a mother, a community member. And when her children grew and her husband died and the traditional markers of her purpose disappeared, she didn't stop. She found new purpose. New reasons to engage, new structures to organize her days. The garden club, the book club, the morning walks, the friendships, the small rituals that created meaning and connection and reasons to keep going. Another memory returns to me now. A woman named Dorothy. She'd been a teacher for 40 years. And when she retired at 68, everyone worried. Worried she'd be like Tom. Worried she'd fade without the structure of work. But Dorothy surprised everyone. She didn't stop teaching. She just changed who she taught and how she taught. She started volunteering at the library, helping kids with reading, tutoring students who were struggling. And then she started teaching computer basics to other seniors. And then she started a writing group. And before long, her retirement was busier than her working years had been. But it was busy by choice, busy with things she chose, busy with purpose she'd created for herself. And she thrived. Turned 75 and was still going strong. Turned 80 and added another volunteer commitment. Turned 83 and seemed younger than people in their 60s. And when asked her secret, she'd say something simple. Something like, I just kept doing what I loved, or I had to stay useful somehow. But underneath those simple statements was something profound. Was the understanding that purpose doesn't retire. That meaning doesn't have an expiration date. That the need to contribute and connect and matter doesn't disappear at 65 or 70 or 75. And that feeding that need, continuing to honor it, was what kept her alive in every sense of the word. I remember another person who defied the decline pattern. A man named Robert. He'd been a widower for 5 years when he hit 75. And everyone expected him to decline, expected him to withdraw, expected him to give up. Because that's what had happened to so many widowers. The loss of a spouse, especially at that age, was often the beginning of the end. But Robert did something different. He joined a grief support group, and in that group he found other people navigating the same loss, found community, found understanding, found a place where he wasn't alone. And after a year in the group, he started facilitating it, started helping others through the same grief he'd experienced, found purpose in his pain, found meaning in his loss, transformed his suffering into service. And that transformation saved him, gave him a reason to get up, a reason to stay engaged, a reason to care for himself because other people were depending on him. The grief didn't disappear, the loss didn't stop hurting, but it became something he could live with, something he could hold, something he could use to help others. And in helping others, he helped himself, stayed connected, stayed purposeful, stayed alive. As the years continued, watching these patterns across different people, certain themes emerged. Certain commonalities among the people who thrived past 75. They weren't universal, weren't guarantees, but they were consistent enough to notice, consistent enough to consider, consistent enough to learn from. The first theme was movement, not exercise necessarily, though that helped, but just movement, regular daily movement. Walking was the most common, but also gardening or dancing, or swimming, or even just moving around the house with purpose. The people who stayed mobile stayed independent. The people who stopped moving declined rapidly. It was almost a law, almost a guarantee. Stop moving and decline follows. Keep moving and independence persists. There was a woman who used to walk her dog every morning, and when the dog died, she stopped walking. And within 6 months, she declined noticeably, had trouble with stairs, needed a walker, seemed years older. And someone suggested she get another dog, and she did. And she started walking again. And within a few months, the decline reversed. She was steadier, stronger, more like herself. The dog wasn't magic. The walking was, the daily movement was. The routine that got her out of the house and moving her body was what made the difference. The second theme was social connection. The people who stayed connected to other people stayed sharper, stayed more engaged, stayed more like themselves. While the people who isolated declined in every measure. Cognitive function, physical ability, emotional well-being, all of it suffered from isolation. All of it benefited from connection. There's something else I think about often. A woman named Margaret. She'd always been social, always had friends, always been involved in community groups. And when she hit her 70s, some of those groups started to fade. People moved away, or got sick, or died. And it would have been easy to let the social life fade too, to accept isolation as inevitable, to withdraw, but Margaret didn't accept it. When her old book club dissolved, she started a new one. When friends moved away, she made new friends. When her church group got too small, she joined a different church. She kept replacing what was lost, kept building new connections, kept refusing to let isolation win. And it took effort, real effort, more effort than maintaining old friendships ever had. But she did it because she understood something crucial. That isolation was dangerous. That connection was survival. That staying engaged with other people was non-negotiable. And she stayed sharp, stayed vibrant, stayed herself well into her 80s because she refused to be alone, refused to let the natural attrition of aging leave her isolated, fought for connection the way some people fight for health. And it worked. It kept her alive in every way that mattered. The third theme was purpose. The people who maintained a sense of purpose, a reason for being, a feeling that they mattered and contributed and had something to offer, those people thrived. While the people who felt useless, purposeless, like they were just waiting to die, those people declined rapidly. The mind and body both respond to purpose. Both thrive when there's a reason to keep going. Both fade when that reason disappears. Another memory surfaces now. A couple, John and Susan. They'd been married for 50 years. And when they retired, they decided to volunteer together. They chose a food bank, went every Tuesday morning, sorted donations, packed boxes, helped distribute food to families who needed it. It wasn't glamorous, wasn't exciting, but it was purpose, it was contribution, it was mattering. It was getting up on Tuesday morning with a place to be and a job to do and people depending on them. And they both thrived, stayed healthy, stayed engaged, stayed connected to each other and to their community. Past 75, past 80, still going every Tuesday morning, still showing up, still contributing. And when asked why they kept doing it, Susan said something simple but profound. She said, "We need to be needed." That need to be needed doesn't go away with age, doesn't retire, doesn't stop mattering. And when it goes unfed, when people retire into irrelevance, into a life where no one needs them and nothing depends on them and they have no role to play, they decline. They fade. They disappear, not because of age, because of purposelessness, because of the death of meaning before the death of the body. The fourth theme was adaptability. The people who could adapt to limitations, who could adjust to changes, who could find new ways to do old things or find new things to do when old things became impossible, those people kept going. While the people who couldn't adapt, who saw limitation as the end, who stopped trying when things got hard, those people declined. I remember another moment. A man who'd been a runner his whole life. And at 73, his knees gave out, just couldn't run anymore, and he was devastated, felt like his identity was gone, felt like life was over. And for a few months he declined, got depressed, stopped moving much at all, started to fade. But then someone suggested swimming, and he resisted at first. Swimming wasn't running, wasn't the same, wasn't what he loved, but he tried it, and found that while it wasn't running, it was still movement. Still challenging, still something, and he kept at it. And slowly the depression lifted. The decline reversed. He found a new community at the pool, made new friends, found new purpose, all because he adapted. Because he was willing to let go of what he couldn't do anymore and embrace what he could still do. That flexibility, that willingness to adapt, seemed almost as important as any other factor. Because aging inevitably brings limitations, brings losses, brings changes. And the response to those changes determines so much. Rigid people who can't adapt break. Flexible people who can adapt, bend, and survive. As time moved forward, another pattern became visible. The people who thrived were the people who stayed curious, who kept learning, who remained engaged with new ideas and new information and new experiences. While the people who stopped being curious, who decided they knew enough, who closed themselves off to newness, those people's minds declined along with their bodies. There was a woman who took up painting at 78, never painted before in her life, but she saw a class at the community center and decided to try, and she was terrible at first. Her paintings looked like a child's drawings, but she kept going, kept trying, kept learning. And slowly she got better. Not great, not professional, but better. And more importantly, engaged. Her mind working, her hands working, her creativity awakening, all at 78. And then she added pottery. And then she tried a photography class. And by 82, she was busier and more engaged than she'd been at 60. All because she'd stayed curious, stayed open, stayed willing to be a beginner, stayed willing to try new things even when she wasn't good at them. That willingness, that openness kept her mind sharp, kept her excited about life, kept her moving forward instead of fading backward. There's something else that stands out when looking at the people who thrived. They took care of themselves, not obsessively. Not perfectly, but consistently. They ate reasonably well, slept reasonably well, saw doctors when needed, took medications as prescribed, managed their health instead of ignoring it, while many people who declined had given up on self-care, had decided they were old so it didn't matter, had stopped trying. Another memory comes to mind. A woman who'd always struggled with her weight, and at 75 she decided to finally address it, not for vanity, for health. For wanting to be around for her grandchildren, for wanting to keep doing the things she loved. So she changed how she ate, started walking more, lost the weight slowly. And at 78, she was healthier than she'd been at 60, more mobile, more energetic, more alive. All because she decided it wasn't too late. That age wasn't an excuse to give up. That caring for herself mattered even at 75, 78, 80. That attitude, that belief that self-care matters at any age, seemed to make an enormous difference. The people who gave up on themselves declined. The people who kept caring for themselves persisted. It wasn't about perfection. It was about effort, about not surrendering, about treating the body with respect even as it aged, about understanding that while decline might be inevitable eventually, its speed and severity were partially within control. And then, sometime later, another realization emerged. The people who thrived had people who cared about them, had family or friends who stayed involved, who checked in, who noticed changes, who offered help when needed but not so much help that it created dependency. That balance, that sweet spot of support without smothering, seemed crucial. Too much help created learned helplessness. Too little help created crisis and rapid decline. But the right amount, given at the right times, helped people stay independent longer. There was a daughter who called her father every morning. Just a quick call. 5 minutes. How are you? What are you doing today? Everything okay? And that daily call meant the father had to stay coherent enough to answer, had to have a plan for his day, had to be okay. And it also meant that when things weren't okay, it was caught early, before a small problem became a crisis, before decline accelerated beyond recovery. That daily touchpoint, that simple connection, kept him safer and more independent than if he'd been left completely alone or if the daughter had taken over his life entirely. I think about all of these patterns now, all of these threads that seem to separate the people who thrive from the people who decline. Movement, connection, purpose, adaptability, curiosity, self-care, support. None of them guarantees, none of them magic, but all of them together creating a kind of resilience. A kind of buffer against the inevitable challenges of aging. A way to cross 75 without falling off a cliff. Because the cliff isn't inevitable. The rapid decline isn't predetermined. It happens when too many of these protective factors disappear at once. When someone stops moving and loses connection and has no purpose and can't adapt and gives up on self-care. When all of those threads break at once, decline happens fast, happens devastatingly. Seems sudden even though it was building through the accumulation of small surrenders. But when those threads stay strong, when people keep moving and stay connected and maintain purpose and adapt when needed and stay curious and care for themselves and have support, aging looks different, looks gentler, looks more gradual. The losses still come. The challenges still arrive. The body still ages. But the person inside stays alive, stays engaged, stays themselves for longer, sometimes much longer. There's another person I think about often, a woman named Ruth. She lived to 97, and she was sharp and engaged and herself right up until the last few months. Hosted her own 97th birthday party, walked with a walker but walked, lived in her own home, made her own decisions. maintained her dignity and autonomy and selfhood until nearly the end. And when asked how she did it, she'd laugh and say she didn't know, said she just kept living. But watching her over the years, it was clear. She did all the things, kept moving, stayed connected, maintained purpose, adapted constantly, stayed curious, cared for herself, had support but not smothering, all of it. All the threads stayed strong. And she's not unique. There are others like her. Not many maybe, but enough to prove it's possible. Enough to show that the rapid decline so many experience isn't the only path, isn't inevitable, is in fact often preventable. Not always. Not in every case. Not when serious illness strikes, but more often than most people realize. The question then becomes, what creates the difference? Why do some people naturally do all these protective things while others don't? And the answer seems to be partly personality, partly life circumstances, partly luck, but also partly awareness, partly understanding that these things matter, that choices made every day accumulate into patterns that determine so much about how aging goes. That giving up is easy, but fighting to stay engaged is worth it. As the years have accumulated, watching all of this, learning from all of these examples, certain truths have crystallized. Aging is inevitable. Decline is not. At least not rapid decline. At least not the kind of collapse that happens seemingly overnight when someone hits 75. That kind of decline, that cliff fall, happens when too many protective factors disappear. When people stop doing the things that keep them alive in more than just the biological sense. And the tragedy is that so many people don't know this. Don't realize that their daily choices matter, that staying engaged matters, that movement matters, that connection matters, that purpose matters. They think aging is something that happens to them, not something they have any agency in. They think decline is inevitable, so why fight it? They give up long before they need to, and the giving up becomes self-fulfilling. Becomes the very thing that causes the decline they feared. But the people who know better, who understand that their choices matter, who fight to stay engaged even when it's hard, even when it would be easier to give up, those people defy the statistics, defy the expectations, defy the notion that 75 is a cliff edge. They show that it's possible to keep going, to stay alive, to remain themselves, to thrive, not just survive, well into their 80s and 90s and beyond. There's one more story I want to share. A man named Frank. He'd had a stroke at 74, and everyone thought that was it. Thought he'd decline rapidly. Thought 75 would be the beginning of the end. And the first few months after the stroke were hard, were scary, were uncertain. He couldn't walk well, couldn't use his right arm, couldn't speak clearly. And it would have been easy to give up, to decide recovery was impossible, to accept a diminished life. But Frank didn't accept it. He worked. Went to physical therapy religiously, did his exercises at home, pushed himself. And slowly, gradually, he recovered. Not fully, never fully, but enough. Enough to walk again, enough to use his arms somewhat, enough to speak well enough to be understood. And he didn't just recover physically, he recovered his life. Went back to his woodworking hobby, adapting his tools for his limited hand function. Went back to his men's group. Went back to volunteering. Went back to living. And now at 81, he's still going. Still woodworking. Still engaged. Still himself. The stroke didn't define him, didn't end him, didn't push him off that 75 cliff, because he refused to fall, refused to give up, refused to accept that decline was inevitable. And his refusal, backed by action, backed by daily effort, backed by adaptation and persistence and purpose, made all the difference. That's what all of these stories teach. That resilience is possible. That thriving is possible. That crossing 75 doesn't have to mean crossing into decline. That the people who keep going, who stay engaged, who maintain all those protective factors, they're not just lucky. They're not just blessed with good genes or good circumstances. They're making choices, daily choices, small choices, choices to move instead of sit, to connect instead of isolate, to adapt instead of surrender, to keep caring instead of giving up. And those choices accumulate, build on each other. Create momentum, create resilience, create a life that continues, that persists, that remains vital and engaged and meaningful well beyond the age when many people have already faded. They show that aging doesn't have to be a tragedy, doesn't have to be a slow loss of everything that matters, can be instead a continuation, a evolution, a different chapter but still a good one, still worth living, still full of purpose and connection and meaning. If any of this gave hope, if these stories offered inspiration or understanding, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like and subscribe. There are more reflections here, more stories of resilience and aging and what it means to live fully at any age. Thank you for listening. And may we all find the courage to keep going, to keep engaging, to keep living, no matter what age we reach. Life is worth it. At 75, at 85, at 95, at any age, it's worth showing up for. Worth fighting for. Worth choosing every single day.